Today, I wanted to talk about the stages of realizing that you're a narcissist. And so, when I think about my own journey of that, when I was uh, when it was first suggested to me, to the idea of looking up at learning about narcissism by my mentor, uh, I did what any good narcissist would do. I took 10, 15 minutes, Googled it a little bit, read a couple things, thought, that's not me. So I just dismissed it. And then it was only a few weeks later when she recommended I look into that again. And this time I took a little more time, dove a little deeper, and learned about the multiple types of narcissists, including covert narcissism, which is what I actually have or present as. So there's 5 stages of recognition to becoming a narcissist, or to learning that you're a narcissist. Stage number 1 is denial, absolute denial. So, like when Anahata, my mentor, mentioned it to me, I was like, me, a narcissist? That's impossible. I'm way too self aware to be a narcissist. Wait a minute. I was thinking I'm too self aware. Make me a narcissist? Anyhow, stage number 2, selective recognition. At this point, I accepted the fact that maybe I was a narcissist, but I'm really like, a unique narcissist, uniquely complex, different than other narcissists, special. Spoiler alert, that's a pretty narcissistic thought. I wasn't in that way. Number 3, the research phase. All right, if I'm going to be a narcissist, I'm going to be the most fucking well-informed narcissist in the world. I dove into the research. I learned about brain chemistry and brain connections and the genetic connections and how you become a narcissist, the PTSD from early childhood trauma, so forth, because I was going to be the most knowledgeable narcissist ever. Again, trying to be special, trying to be different. The narcissism is a funny trait that sort of just, weaves its way through everything. Not necessarily in a good way or a bad way, just in a way that's real. Number 4, that oh crap moment. This is like when I started to notice the narcissistic traits happening in real time. Like a friend was really expressing some of her discouragement and anxiety and stress around a whole situation with work that really wasn't working for her anymore, but she didn't really know a way to change it that was doable. Maybe she knew the way, but she wasn't willing to do it yet. Anyhow, and just was expressing emotionally to me. And man, at the moment it struck me, it's like, oh man, I am freaking out right now. I'm going into anxiety because I'm thinking, okay, she's expressing something emotionally. What am I supposed to do here? How am I supposed to respond? What's the math of it? Because, as you may know, with narcissists, we don't really experience empathy the same way. And so when people express emotionally to us, we don't have that same feeling back as sort of the normies do. And in a lot of narcissist cases like mine, those situations actually trigger an anxiety or like even a PTSD response. And so as I started to become more aware of my narcissism, I started to notice those moments as they happen. Like, oh man, this is one of those times. What do I do? What do I do? Because I had made a decision. I didn't want to just do what I've always done, which is really try to fake it. But I didn't know what to put in its place. So that was like the oh crap moment. And then stage 5, acceptance with humor, hopefully. This is when you're like, yes, okay, I am a narcissist. And no, that doesn't make me a terrible person. It just makes me predictable in certain situations. So recognition isn't about beating yourself up or freaking out about the label, because I went through that. The label, people are going to think bad about me, and so forth. But, and then like, what's wrong with me? But once you start to, go through those 5 stages and really accept it, then you can start working with it. Then you can start creating a life that works for you. And so that's a little fun journey through the 5 stages of becoming aware of a narcissist. All right, go ahead and subscribe, give a thumbs up, comments or questions below, how this is working for you. What stage are you in? Did you have another stage? How did that happen for you? Have you reached the acceptance with humor phase yet or not? I'd love to interact with you guys and in the comments and so forth. All right, take care. Hey there. Becoming a narcissist isn't exactly a career aspiration. I mean, nobody's out there saying, when I grow up, I want to be emotionally unavailable and misunderstood. But here we are. So I just want to, cover in this one how the narcissist gets made. Really, it's a combination of that susceptibility genetically, the way your brain is hardwired, combined with the nurture, the upbringing, how it all happens. And sort of at like a base fundamental level, the most common understanding kind of from the psychology world of how how a narcissist is made is a combination of certain messaging as a child. On the one hand, the message is somehow you're unique, you're special, you're different. But then on the other hand, you are a total waste of time, unworthy, no value at all. Now, a lot of that is not directly spoken. Like in my case, nobody was saying to me, "Oh, you're worthless," that type of thing. Though I know some kids get that kind of abuse from their caregivers, but it's really that sort of two sides, two extreme polar opposites in the information, the messaging, the what you're given as an example as a kid that starts this process or this ball rolling. But for me, that combination of the genetic susceptibility, the function of my brain, how it's hardwired, in combination with the development from those two contradictory messages being the primary messaging that I got as a kid, set up the perfect recipe to become a narcissist. The takeaway here is the narcissism is obviously not something you choose. It's something that you end up adapting to. And understanding that and where it comes from and how it develops is an important first step in the journey of figuring out how to work with it effectively, how to live a satisfying life, have that sense of personal freedom, not feel like you have to fake it and perform. Because let me tell you, that is freaking exhausting. All right, so let's go a little deeper into how someone becomes a narcissist. I've shared a little bit about my story in previous episodes, so I'm not going to get into some of those details. But basically, you get this very contradictory mixed message. On the one hand, in some way or another, you're told you're special or you're better. But then on the other hand, you're told you're completely worthless and not worthy of being loved. For me, it was I was good at school and had a lot of intelligence in that way, and that was seen as a high value by my mom, who was the head of our family, the narcissist in the family. But on the other hand, I got almost no loving attention, loving touch, caring words, and those kind of things. And so those were the two messages. You're special because you're smart at like school and stuff, but you're also not worth loving and unworthy of that. And so that creates this perfect mixture. It's like a petri dish of how to grow a narcissist. So when I was a kid, what would I do with that mixed message? It actually set up the perfect situation for a person like me to become like a PhD level anthropologist. It's like I didn't understand how the rest of the world worked because what I learned was I'm not worthy of being loved. So I have to perform in some way. I have to set up a fake persona in order to be loved, or more specifically, in order to keep people at arm's length so that no one would discover the true me, because if they did, then they learned the big secret, which is that I wasn't worth, that there's something wrong with me and I wasn't worthy of being loved. So this is where that strategic mind of the narcissist really starts to form. Think of it as like leveling up the wrong skill tree. So while other kids were developing their emotional intelligence, building that up, I was becoming the grandmaster of pattern recognition. If someone does X and then you're supposed to do Y to respond to that. But it was like, I could navigate social situations because I was very observant and strategic, but it was like using Google Translate for emotional conversations. Technically functional, but missing, a lot of the nuance. And this system that I developed worked well enough that it became so ingrained that I didn't even realize it wasn't how everybody else was operating. I didn't know that everybody else felt the things they were emoting when they would have emotional type of situations. I thought they were like me, but they were just better at faking it. It's kind of like when I discovered that, it's kind of like realizing everybody else has been eating real food while I've been eating plastic food. It looks the same, but obviously not nutritionally, as beneficial, right? And, as a kid, I can remember being furious about my mom and a couple things. Being one of them was like, I really thought she was like two-faced a lot. She would act a certain way around the public or other people, and then a completely different way around me, and I would get so upset about it. I I just was like, it was infuriating as a kid. I mean, take for example what I call the Great T-shirt incident. When I was a teenager, I was going. A friend of mine had a wealthy stepfather, and they invited me to go for a weekend on their yacht on a little cruise, and I was excited about it. And I was getting ready to pack, and I had this T-shirt that was like my favorite T-shirt at the time. I was a 15-year-old boy, right? And it was this T-shirt that had a picture of Jim Morrison on it, and I thought it was cool. But my mom thought it was kind of ratty looking, which it was. And she was said, you are not bringing that T-shirt with you, to those people, because they were wealthy. They, in her mind, they were like higher up on the hierarchy scale. These wealthy upper echelon people. And I was like, what in the world? They're not going to care what T-shirt I'm wearing. And even if they think the T-shirt is ratty, they're not going to think badly about you. They're not going to be like, oh, that kid Brad is wearing a ratty T-shirt. He's got bad parents. It was totally illogical, and I was so upset about it. In fact, when it was time to pack, I was going to take it anyway, but I couldn't find the T-shirt anywhere because my mom had taken it out of my drawer, and I still wonder where that T-shirt is these days. Anyway, but it was, I would get so mad about it. But it was like this classic narcissistic image management, which I was furious about, but also becoming a very fine student of, because I did learn to do the same thing, hide the true me so that nobody could get close enough to find out my big secret, which was clearly there was something wrong with me because I was unworthy of being loved. I learned that from the childhood. And this type of thing created this perfect feedback loop of narcissistic development. It's kind of like being in a play where you are the lead role, where you landed the lead role by pretending to be somebody else. But now you're stuck playing that character forever, starring the normal person, the musical, now running for 50 years, no understudy available, So I installed this complex systems in my head with specific rules to keep me feeling safe. Safe from anyone finding out the truth, safe from anyone finding out that there was something wrong with me that meant I was unlovable. And the result was, for me, I became dead set that I'd never get married, never have kids. Now at the time, I latched onto some stories about why that was. I was never going to have kids because the earth is overpopulated and I don't want to bring kids into this horrible planet and things like that. But none of that was really it. It was really because I thought that, or I didn't think, subconsciously, I knew that if I had a spouse, I had kids, suddenly I'd be bringing people into my intimate space and they would find out this horrible secret that I worked so hard to keep anyone from knowing, which again is that there's something wrong with me and I was unlovable. But fast forward, I did get married, had 3 daughters, and I was totally unaware of this whole narcissist piece when my kids were little. And I thought I was doing a good job. I thought I was doing better than my parents because I would hug my kids sometimes, and I would say that I love them sometimes and give them affection and attention sometimes. But spoiler alert, sometimes is not a real good parenting strategy to be a loving parent. So now that I'm becoming aware of all of this, I realize how that cycle gets passed down from one generation to the next, and I was passing it down to my own kids by operating in that same way. The good news is that with awareness, we can actually learn to break the cycle. If once we understand how this operating system got installed, it doesn't mean that we're stuck with it. We, with this original programming we were given, we can actually create a new code. The key is recognizing that while we may have developed these patterns for survival, we're not stuck with them. Yeah, our brains are wired differently, and that's the hardware that we may have to live with. But the software is more flexible than we think. And this is where the hope lies, in the becoming aware, becoming an awake narcissist. Understanding the operating system and how it works actually gives you the opportunity to start rewriting that software. And while the hardware, like I said, is ingrained and set, once we understand it and start creating new software, we can actually start operating in the world in a way that's actually satisfying and respects ourselves and respects the people around us. Even though I will probably never look like the picture perfect dad. But once I have started to understand this and can really just be honest and tell my kids, hey, this is me, I'm never going to be that, emotionally, loving dad in the way that, you see on TV or you see with your other friends. But I have different ways of showing that care and love. And so let's do that. Let's start from there so we can understand each other. And it gives you that chance to break up that old pattern. And is it easy? Hell no, it's not easy. It's like teaching cats to speak French. Is it possible? We're finding out. So the goal here isn't to completely rewrite the operating system, because that's probably not possible. And frankly, it might not even be desirable. The goal is to understand how we got here, recognize those patterns, and find ways to create authentic connections while staying true to ourselves, right? I don't want to just go from this one facade of, the protection that I learned to try to keep people out and then create like a whole different facade that's not really me, that's like the loving guy, because let me tell you, I tried that and it doesn't work. It's exhausting. And so the key is to find that middle ground where you can be your authentic self, and not be just operating from those reflexive patterns you got as a kid, but really be real. And it's challenging in a lot of ways. One, a lot of those things are really ingrained. I mean, I'm 50 years old before I figured all this out. So I got years, thousands, and probably millions of micro experiences over time that were that feedback loop that I learned all these ways of being that become almost reflexive. But once you start diving in, once you pierce that veil of the reality of the situation and how things are different, you can start becoming aware of it. And that awareness allows you to make different choices. Now, sometimes those different choices are after the fact. I do something, operate, in a certain way or respond in a certain way, and it's totally off and off-putting to the other person. And then later I'm like, that was that narcissist thing. Okay, so then I got to circle back and talk to them and make it right. Sometimes now I'm catching it in advance and I can operate differently. I can respond differently. I can be really real about who I am, because that's that middle ground that is the best place to find yourself. Just being really who you are, unapologetic, and that can get tricky or slippery with the narcissist thing, because we'll go around stomping on people unapologetically. That's not really what I mean. I mean not being apologetic for being who I really am, even if it looks totally different than what the people in front of me are wanting from me or hoping to get from me, because I can't stuff myself into a different box. I have to be me, and we all have to learn to be ourselves. But the key is learning that that's okay, that there isn't actually something wrong with me, that I'm not a bad, fundamentally bad or unlovable person, that if I just stay true to who I am and learn, take those small steps every day, becoming more authentically me, no matter what that looks like, that I will then start to create a world that meets me there. Some relationships will likely fall away. I've already seen that happen somewhat. Some relationships will actually grow deeper, and there'll be new relationships with people that develop out of that authentic self. Because being fake, putting up that shield, it is so exhausting. It's why I've throughout my life spent so much time alone, because I'm just so tired of interacting with people, because it's so much work to put up that fake facade. So once we start to become aware of these things, we can actually start using some of that stuff towards the purposes that we want, rather than trying to stay hidden or manipulate our world to feel safe. We'll get into some of that later, but I just wanted to dive a little deeper into the formation of that narcissistic personality. So hopefully that's helpful. Get some value out of this. Go ahead and subscribe, give a thumbs up, post some stuff in the comments, questions you might have, experiences that maybe were similar for you, different for you, what your thoughts are. I'd love to read those things, and even learn from you guys if you have experiences, because we're all kind of going through this journey together. All right, you take care.